As all members have received a copy of the call for tonight's meeting, the reading of the call will be omitted. Will everyone please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to the December meeting of the Representative Town Meeting. My name is Tom Byrne, RTM moderator. Before getting any further, I do want to apologize. I just realized when I sent out a notice last night suggesting an organization for tonight's call, I had actually intended, as all of our districts that reported had recommended, to put items 2, 3, and 4 on the consent calendar. I see I said combined, and I apologize for that mistake. So that's my intention. I tell you that in advance. You know, we do have a procedure. If there's any objection to items being placed on the consent calendar, the objection can be made, and if 20 members support that, it will not be put on the consent calendar. So I apologize for that. I had meant to say consent calendar. All right. As all members have received a copy of the minutes of our October 27 meeting, the reading of those minutes will be omitted. Are there any suggested changes to those minutes? Hearing none and absent objection, the minutes as submitted stand adopted upon unanimous consent. All right, I don't believe we had any preliminary matters. Is that correct? Is there any report out there waiting to be made? I don't believe so. All right. I did notify our district and committee chairs that based upon the reports we received from our districts and committees, it was a consensus to place items 2, 3, and 4 on our consent calendar and to take up items 1 and 5 separately. So at this point, pursuant to our rules, I will designate the following 3 items to be placed on the consent calendar. If they remain on that calendar, the only thing that we will hear tonight about them is what I'm about to say now, as we do not get committee reports or have discussion on consent calendar items. So I will place item 2, which is the appointment of Larry Simon to be a member of the Nathaniel Witherell Board for a term expiring March 31, 2016. Item 3 is the acceptance of a donation of 4 Speed Sentry Shield speed detection display signs with an approximate value of $7,000 from the Northwest Greenwich Association, for which we are thankful. And item 4 is an appropriation of $75,000 for the replacement of a new chiller, compressor, and barrel at Dorothy Hamill Rink. So those 3 items are now on our consent calendar. Is there any objection to the designation of those items for our consent calendar? Hearing none, will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Consent calendar items 2, 3, and 4, and proceed to poll your delegation. All right, we'll now take up the 2 separate items, beginning with item number 1. Presenting that item is Lloyd Bankson, Chair of the Finance Committee of the Board of Directors of Nathaniel Witherell. Mr. Bankson.
Good evening, everyone. After all the times that we have been here asking for money, and it is many, many times over many, many years, I've been on the board for 6 years, it is a pleasure to be here tonight to talk about a topic where we're actually getting money to come into the town of Greenwich. As you can read in the minutes, the amount that's coming in is $4,490,918. This is coming in the form of an historic tax credit. These are often sold at a discount of either 10 or 20%. We've had ongoing discussions with CL&P, including today, where they have confirmed that they would buy these at par. So we would get the full, no discount, $4,490,000 without any deductions whatsoever. The rest is in the minutes here. You'll notice as we go on that Legislative and Rules has actually modified the wording quite a bit in the opening paragraph. And Finance has put in a restriction that says this transaction must be done at par, which it will be done at. But aside from that, I think it's very clear what's written here. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. We also have Dave Panico, who's come down from Hartford, from Robinson and Cole, and he drafted the language.
All right, so this is, you are now presenting item 1 exactly as it appears on our call. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Will the member please move the adoption of the resolution? The resolution on item 1 has been moved and seconded. May we hear the reports of the committees that considered this, beginning with Alexis Volgaris, Chair of our Health and Human Services Committee.
Good evening. The Health and Human Services Committee met with Alan Brown, Executive Director of Witherell, as well as 3 Witherell board members, Lloyd Bankston, David Ormsby, and Stephen Solar, last Tuesday to discuss this item. Given the expense of Project Renew, the Witherell Board and the Friends of Nathaniel Witherell, the 501c3 fundraising arm of Witherell, endeavored to identify any and all resources that would allow them to help offset costs associated with this project. Through their extensive research, the Friends of Nathaniel Witherell identified both federal and state historic tax credits as possible sources of funds, and ultimately determined that pursuing state tax credits would be the most productive. The Friends then began the lengthy and complex application process of having the Witherell campus designated as a historic site in order to qualify for tax credits in Connecticut. In August of 2010, the Witherell campus was designated as a historic site, and in June of 2013, Witherell was informed by the Connecticut State Historic Preservation Office that they would be awarded approximately $4.5 million in tax credits upon completion of Project Renew. Once the Friends and the Board of Witherell learned that they were due to receive the historic tax credits, they immediately began the tedious process of identifying a buyer who would purchase these credits at par value. On February 14, 2014, Witherell received a preliminary commitment from Connecticut Light and Power to purchase these credits at par value. Once the transaction is complete, the tax credits are intended to repay the $950,000 capital non-recurring fund loan used to finance part of Project Renew, as well as pay down some of the principal and interest on the Nathaniel Witherell bonds. There was also some discussion in our committee regarding setting aside some portion of the money to address ongoing maintenance associated with some of the new equipment, for example, new boilers and the HVAC handlers, as well as earmarking some portion of the money for renovations to the common use areas in the tower portion of the building that has yet to be renovated. While our committee has no purview over such decisions, we hope that the entities responsible for determining how the money should be spent will consider the need for ongoing maintenance and future renovations in their decision-making process. Our committee would like to acknowledge the dogged efforts put forth by the Witherell Board and Friends of Nathaniel Witherell in identifying the historic tax credits as a viable option, and then spending years shepherding the application through the arduous state of Connecticut application process, and then finally identifying, then negotiating with the buyer who had agreed to purchase these credits at par value. Our vote was 11-0-0 with District 3 absent on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, we took up this item last Monday evening. We had Town Attorney Wayne Fox and Bond Counsel David Panico of Robinson and Cole presenting this item, and they were later joined by Lloyd Bankston and Alan Brown of Nathaniel Witherell. Attorneys Panico and Fox provided the committee with historical background, including the application process and the circumstances surrounding identifying CL&P as a buyer of these credits. We were told that customarily these tax credits are purchased at around 90% of face value. As you just heard, they're being purchased at par value. Our committee next considered the language of the resolution, and we made some changes, 3 changes that can be characterized as Scrivener's errors, typographical errors that were made, and at the appropriate time, Mr. Moderator, I'll bring those to the attention of the group. Our committee then addressed paragraph 1 of the resolution, which asks that the RTM ratify, quote, applications, agreements, or actions heretofore submitted, executed, or taken. A majority of our committee was concerned about providing a retroactive blanket approval of the actions of all participating parties without knowing exactly what those actions were. Bond counsel Panico stated that this paragraph was inserted at his suggestion and is similar in scope to the funding and bonding resolutions that we approve at our May budget hearings. It is also his opinion that CLMP may want to see this ratification language in the resolution so that there's no doubt that all approvals necessary to transfer the credits have been obtained. Committee members nevertheless expressed concern that without knowing about the application process necessary to obtain these credits, the RTM shouldn't necessarily ratify all that has happened. We were then joined by Alan Brown and Lloyd Bankston. Mr. Brown provided us with details concerning the application process and the steps that he took to obtain the approval from the state to acquire the credits. He surmised that the only instance in which he could have done something wrong in the application process would have been to misstate the cost of the project, although he went on to say he did not do so. However, there is a protection in place concerning the cost of construction because the application is subject to a third-party audit in any event, which is designed to verify the construction costs and the payments. Mr. Brown could not think of anything that would have been done incorrectly with respect to this application. So we then took votes as to the legal order on this resolution as revised with the Scrivener's errors to provide the correct language. The first vote we took was on the resolution as presented. Our vote was 2 in favor, 7 opposed. We then considered a motion to delete paragraph 1 in its entirety. That is that paragraph that speaks to ratification. That was offered by District 12. Our vote was 3 in favor, 6 opposed, so that motion failed. We then took up a motion to revise paragraph 1 offered by District 7, which revision adds language to paragraph 1, which at the appropriate time I will provide that language to the body. Our vote on the motion, on the resolution as amended, was 8 in favor, 1 opposed.
Thank you. Michael Warner, Chair of our Finance Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator and fellow members. Without revisiting everything you've heard, I would say that we met on December 1st. We had Lloyd Bankston and Alan Brown with us, and pretty much what you've already heard is what we heard at our meeting. I will not repeat what you've heard so far, except to say certainly CLMP deserves some recognition, our recognition, for buying this tax credit at its full value, where by and large most of these are purchased at less than full value. This item was discussed at length, and we are also going to recommend tightening up of the language by adding 5 words at a later time, so we'll introduce that resolution. But as amended with the additional 5 words, which tightens up the language a little bit, we voted for this item 1200.
Thank you. Why don't we get the changes from our Legislative and Rules Committee first? Mr. Wells.
So the 3 changes that can be characterized as Scrivener's errors are in the 4th whereas clause. In the 3rd line, the word A is deleted so that it reads receipt of state historic tax credits. The 2nd change is in the last whereas clause. In the 2nd line, the last word in that line is or. That word is deleted, and inserted in its place is the word of, so that it reads must be used to pay the principal of and interest on the bonds. And finally, in paragraph 3, between the words authorized and accept, the word to is inserted so that that phrase reads is authorized to accept. Now, the change that we made to paragraph 1, which is a change of substance, is
All right, why don't we take care of those first? We
Okay.
can adopt, this would be a motion to amend item 1. We can adopt it upon unanimous consent. Is there any objection to the proposed amendments that you just heard? Is there any need to repeat that? No. All right. Those amendments may be adopted upon unanimous consent. Mr. Wells.
Then our final change that we made to paragraph 1 of the resolution, at the end of the first line, the last word is taken, and what we inserted is the following language: with regard to the state historic tax credit application process for Project Renew and related items. And the rest of it reads as it is in the call.
All right. This again was in the written report of the committee. Is there any need? So that is a motion to amend item 1, which is now before us, offered on behalf of one of our committees. It does not require a second. Is there any need to repeat the content of this motion? All right. Again, we can adopt such a motion upon unanimous consent. Is there any objection to this motion to amend offered by our Legislative and Rules Committee? Hearing none, absent objection, that motion to amend is adopted upon unanimous consent. Thank you, Mr. Wells. Mr. Warner.
With respect to item 2 in the resolution, the Finance Committee is recommending the addition of some wording that will tighten up this agreement. This agreement fundamentally authorizes the first selectman to close the deal on behalf of the town. The Nathaniel Weatherall being a creature of the town, the wording, the additional words on the second page of your call under item 2. Let me start with the first page. The first selectman is hereby authorized to negotiate, execute, and deliver any agreements, documents, instruments, and certificates, and to take any other action necessary to sell the tax credits for a price. And here the Finance Committee adds the following words: equal to the tax credit. That is to say, the full par value of the tax credit, as was explained to us by Mr. Bankson. I understand from him and Mr. Brown that this is already in writing. The representatives of Wither Hall fully endorsed this language, and we recommend that it be included in the resolution.
All right. So again, this is a motion offered on behalf of our Finance Committee to amend item number 1, as you just heard. That is now currently before us. And I understand there is no objection to it, so there's no need for, you have no desire to speak on this motion to amend. Is there any objection to the Finance Committee motion to amend item 1? Hearing none, that motion to amend is adopted upon unanimous consent. Thank you. All right, discussion on item 1. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Item number 1 as amended. That now brings us to item number 5. David Ormsby, Chairman of the Board of Directors of Nathaniel Weatherall, will present that item to us.
Mr. Moderator, Madam Town Clerk, ladies and gentlemen of the RTM, I would propose to, and do propose to, introduce the resolution in the form set forth as item 5 in your call. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the member please move the adoption of the resolution? Resolution on item 5 has been moved and seconded. Alexis Vulgaris, Chair of our Health and Human Services Committee, with that report.
Good evening. Alan Brown, as well as members of the board, walked us through this item. This $100,000 appropriation is for the purchase and installation of additional security equipment. Witherall's present security system is modest and antiquated and is in need of an upgrade to comply with proper safety and monitoring protocols for patients and staff. With the completion of Project Renew, there are many new points of entry and egress on the campus, and those new points need to be monitored. For example, the old basement and storage area in the garden level of Witherall is now home to 21 private rooms, as well as the Witherall Cafe. For those residents suffering from dementia, all points of entry and exit must be properly monitored to prevent wandering. In recent years, families of residents as well as staff have expressed concern over the limited security measures in place, and if one of the residents were to wander off campus and get lost or injured, that could result in significant citations from the state. The security specialists, the town's sole security vendor, toured Witherall and recommended the following enhanced security features: upgrading the closed-circuit TV system, adding an enhanced network of video recorders, and installing the following: card readers for employees to enter, exit the building, a courtyard main gate, and lockdown buttons at 6 nursing stations. The cost for these additions is slated to come from a $500,000 grant received by the town from the state of Connecticut under the State Town Economic Assistance Program, or STEEP. Our committee voted 11-0-0 with District 3 absent to support this allocation. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Warner with the report of our Finance Committee.
The facts having just been presented, I will tell you that fundamentally, we voted on this item. We had, again, Alan Brown with us, 12-0-0. And I would just add that there's a huge liability issue here. And this, even whether it was paid for by a grant or not, we should be having this done. And it was reflected in our vote of 12-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on item 5. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards, item number 5, and proceed to poll your delegation. I have the results of the vote on the consent calendar items. Those were items 2, 3, and 4. Those in favor, 163. Opposed, 0. Abstaining, 2. The consent calendar items have carried. There being no further business to come before the meeting, we will await the tally of the 2 pending votes before proceeding to adjourn. May I have your attention? David Ormsby would like to make an invitation to the members. David Ormsby, Chair of Nathaniel Witherell Board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I cannot improve on Ms. Vulgaris' description of the item that you're now voting on, so I have no other comments. But I would extend a warm invitation to everybody in the room, and indeed to those RTM members who are not in the room, to come over and take a look at what you and we have accomplished over the last almost 10 years. I think it's the new Nathaniel Witherell, improved by Project Renew, is something everybody in this room and every taxpayer in this town should be proud of. So come over and take a look. Doesn't require any advance invitations or reservations. Just show up at the door. Thanks very much.
We have the results of the vote on item number 1, which is the authorization to sell the tax credits. Those in favor, 173. Opposed, 1. Abstaining, 0. That item is carried. Item 5 was the appropriation of funds for security purposes at Nathaniel Witherell. Those in favor, 169. Opposed, 1. Abstaining, 0. That item has carried. There being no further business to come before the meeting, this meeting stands adjourned upon unanimous consent. Thank you all for coming. I wish you a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Have a safe trip home.